They told her to drink his blood or die. She chose neither. And that's when her veins lit up like liquid gold, bright enough to blind every wolf in the stone circle. That's when the Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in 5 territories, the male who'd never bowed to anyone, dropped to his knees. That's when his wolf, that ancient, savage beast that had torn through armies, lowered its head in submission to something it recognized but couldn't name. That's when Arya realized she'd been running from the wrong thing her entire life. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Because 3 days before her blood turned gold and shook the foundations of pack law, Arya was just trying not to die in the rain. Blood tastes like copper and shame when you're swallowing it to survive. Arya's fingers dug into frozen earth as she dragged herself beneath the collapsed oak, its roots creating a cage that smelled of rot and rain. Her breath came in shallow gasps that fogged the November air. Each inhale sent fire through her ribs where the enforcer's claws had caught her during the chase. The wound wasn't healing. It should have been healing by now. 3 hours. She'd been running for 3 hours through the Blackthorn territory, and they were still coming. The storm overhead matched the chaos in her chest. Thunder rolled across the mountains like war drums, and lightning cracked the sky open in jagged silver scars. Rain hammered down in sheets so thick she could barely see 10 feet ahead. But she could hear them. The howls. Getting closer. Always closer. Her wolf was screaming inside her, clawing at the cage of her control, begging to be released. But Arya couldn't let her out. Not again. Not after what happened last time. The memory flashed hot and unwanted. The elder's shocked face. The circle of pack members stepping back, away from her like she was diseased. The whisper that spread through the gathering like poison through veins. Her eyes. Did you see her eyes? They're wrong. She's wrong. Arya pressed her palm against the wet ground and felt it. That terrible, beautiful power that lived in her marrow. It pulsed beneath her skin like a second heartbeat, golden and ancient and utterly forbidden. She'd spent 23 years hiding it, suffocating it, pretending she was normal. One moment of lost control, and everything she'd built had shattered. They'd given her a choice. Exile or execution. Some choice. A branch snapped 30 yards to her left. Arya froze, every muscle locked tight. Through the curtain of rain, she caught movement. Dark shapes threading between the trees. 4 of them. No, 5. The Blackthorn enforcers, and they were fanning out in a search pattern. She recognized the one in front. Marcus. He'd smiled at her once at a territory gathering, offered her water when she was thirsty. Now he was hunting her like prey, following orders from an alpha who decided she was too dangerous to let live. Spread out, Marcus called, his voice cutting through the storm. She's injured. She can't have gone far. Arya's hand moved to her side, came away sticky with blood. He was right. The wound was deep, and without her wolf's healing, she was running on borrowed time. She needed to shift. She needed to run. But shifting meant releasing the thing inside her, and that thing had already cost her everything. Her old pack's words echoed in her skull like a curse. Abomination. Corruption. Too dangerous to exist. The rain intensified, turning the forest floor into a river of mud and fallen leaves. Arya's hair was plastered to her face, her clothes soaked through and clinging to her shaking frame. Cold was setting in. The kind of cold that preceded death. She could feel her power rising, responding to her fear, trying to protect her. Golden light flickered beneath her skin like embers catching flame. No, not now. She shoved it down, buried it deep, even as her vision started to blur. There, one of the enforcers shouted. I see tracks. They were close enough now that Arya could hear their footsteps squelching through the mud. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard she thought it might crack bone. This was it. This was how it ended. Alone in the rain, bleeding out beneath a dead tree, hunted by wolves who should have been her people. She closed her eyes and thought about her mother. The woman she barely remembered, who died when Arya was 6. Her mother's last words whispered in her ear as fever took her. Hide your light, my darling. Hide it until the right moment. The world isn't ready for what you are. 23 years she'd hidden. And still, it hadn't been enough. The enforcers were so close now she could smell them. Wet fur and pine and the metallic edge of adrenaline. Arya pressed herself deeper into the roots, ignoring the pain that screamed through her body, and prepared to die. Then the forest went silent. Not the natural silence of held breath, but something deeper. Something that made every hair on Arya's body stand straight. The rain continued its assault, but the sounds of pursuit had stopped. No footsteps. No voices. Just the sudden, heavy weight of a presence that made the air itself feel dense. Through the gaps in the roots, Arya saw the enforcers had frozen. Marcus stood completely still, his head tilted like he was listening to something only he could hear. Then, slowly, impossibly, he took a step backward. "Retreat," Marcus said, his voice strange. "Tight. Everyone, fall back. Now." "But sir, she's right. I said fall back." The command cracked like a whip. "We're leaving. Don't question it." Arya watched, disbelieving, as 5 trained enforcers turned and melted back into the trees. They moved fast, almost running, like something had spooked them worse than any injured wolf could. She lay there in her hiding place, bleeding and confused, as the sounds of their departure faded into the storm. What just happened? Why would they leave when they had her cornered? The answer came in the form of footsteps. But these weren't the heavy, purposeful strides of enforcers. These moved with a different quality. Measured. Confident. The walk of someone who owned the ground beneath their feet. Arya's breath caught as a figure emerged from the rain-soaked darkness. Male. Tall enough that he had to be well over 6 feet. He wore a long black coat that moved around him like living shadow, and his dark hair was slicked back from a face that could have been carved from stone. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart. They glowed. Amber shot through with silver, bright enough to cut through the storm's gloom. And they were looking directly at her hiding place. Arya. His voice was deep, rough like whiskey over gravel. He said her name like he'd said it 1,000 times before. Like it belonged in his mouth. "You can come out now. They're gone." How did he know her name? She'd never seen this man before in her life. Arya stayed exactly where she was, muscles coiled tight, ready to bolt even though she knew she wouldn't make it 10 feet. The stranger took another step closer. Water ran down his face, dripped from his jaw. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator, but there was something else there. Something that made her wolf sit up and pay attention in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "I know you're hurt," he continued, crouching down until he was eye level with her hiding spot. "I can smell your blood from here. That wound needs attention, and you're going into shock. You have maybe an hour before you lose consciousness. Maybe less. Who are you?" Arya managed to force the words through chattering teeth. His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Someone who's been looking for you for a very long time. My name is Damon. And, before you ask, no, I'm not here to hurt you. If I wanted you dead, I would have let Marcus and his pack finish the job." "Then what do you want?" "To take you somewhere safe." He held out his hand. It was large, scarred across the knuckles, and steady despite the rain. "Somewhere you won't have to hide what you are. Somewhere people like us finally make sense. People like us." The words sent a shock through her system. "You don't know what I am. Don't I?" Those amber-silver eyes seemed to see straight through her flesh, down to the golden power that writhed beneath her skin. "I know exactly what you are, Arya. I've known since the moment you were born. And I've been waiting for you to stop running. Before you hit that subscribe button, yes, that one right there, let me tell you something. This story? It's just beginning." Arya doesn't know it yet, but the man standing in the rain offering his hand is about to turn her entire world inside out. If you want to know what happens when she takes that hand, when she discovers exactly why her veins glow gold, you need to subscribe to Cindy's Wolfheart stories right now. Hit that notification bell. Because what's coming next will change everything you thought you knew about power, prophecy, and what it really means to be chosen. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. Now, back to that outstretched hand and the decision that will alter the course of Arya's fate. Arya stared at Damon's hand like it was a trap waiting to spring. Every instinct she'd honed over 23 years of survival screamed at her not to trust. Not to hope. Hope was the thing that got you killed. But her body was making decisions her mind couldn't override. The cold had sunk its teeth deep into her bones. Her vision swam at the edges, dark spots blooming like ink in water. The wound at her side had stopped bleeding, which wasn't a good sign. It meant she didn't have enough blood left to lose. "Why should I trust you?" The words came out slurred. Damon's expression shifted. Something flickered in those impossible eyes. Pain, maybe. Or recognition. "You shouldn't. Trust isn't something either of us can afford. But right now, you have two choices. Take my hand and live long enough to regret it, or stay here and become just another body the Blackthorn pack buries in unmarked ground." Which sounds more appealing? When he put it that way, Arya reached out. Her fingers were numb, clumsy. The moment her hand touched his, heat exploded up her arm. Not painful, but shocking in its intensity. Like touching a live wire. Like coming home. Her wolf surged inside her, not in fear or aggression, but in something that felt disturbingly like recognition. Damon's eyes widened. Just a fraction, but enough that Arya knew he'd felt it too. "Interesting," he murmured, and pulled her out from beneath the roots. The world tilted sideways. Arya would have fallen if Damon hadn't caught her, one arm sliding around her waist to steady her. He was solid. Real. And he radiated heat like a furnace, which her hypothermic body gravitated toward without permission. "Easy," he said, his voice close to her ear. "I've got you." She wanted to pull away, to prove she didn't need anyone's support. But her legs had turned to water, and pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. Instead, she let him take most of her weight as he guided her through the trees. "Where are we going?" Arya asked, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. "Somewhere they won't follow." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting right now." There was no malice in his tone, just flat statement of fact. "Save your energy for walking. We have ground to cover." They moved through the forest in silence broken only by the storm's fury. Arya lost track of time. Minutes or hours could have passed. Everything blurred together into a nightmare of rain and pain and the steady presence of the stranger beside her. Damon didn't speak, but she could feel him watching her. Assessing. Not the way Marcus and the enforcers had looked at her, like she was a problem to be eliminated. This was different. He looked at her like she was a puzzle he'd been trying to solve for years, and he'd finally found a missing piece. "You're not from Blackthorn territory," Arya said eventually, needing to break the silence before it swallowed her whole. "No." "Or Silverpine." "No." "Then where?" "Everywhere." "Nowhere." He adjusted his grip as they navigated around a fallen log. "I don't claim territory the way most alphas do." "Alpha." The word confirmed what her instincts had been screaming since he appeared. This man was dominant in a way that transcended normal pack hierarchy. He moved through the world like he'd carved out his place with his bare hands and dared anyone to challenge it. "How did you know my name?" Arya pressed. "How did you know where to find me?" "I've been tracking you for 3 months. Ever since the incident at your old pack's harvest gathering." The harvest gathering. Where everything had fallen apart. Where she'd lost control. "You were there." Her voice went sharp despite her weakness. "Not in person. But I have eyes everywhere." And when a wolf manifests power that makes elders run for cover, word tends to spread. He paused. "The golden flame. That's what they're calling it. Some think you're cursed. Others think you're the fulfillment of something much older. And what do you think?" Damon looked down at her, and in his eyes she saw ancient knowledge. "Secrets that predated modern packs. I think you're exactly what the old stories promised. And I think that terrifies you even more than it terrifies them." He was right, and she hated him for it. They emerged from the dense woods into a small clearing. At its center stood a cabin that looked like it had grown from the forest itself. Old timber, moss-covered roof, windows that glowed with warm lamplight. It looked like shelter. It looked like safety. It looked like a trap. This is your somewhere they won't follow? Arya asked skeptically. This ground is protected by wards older than you or I. Your scent stops at the tree line. To anyone tracking you, you simply vanished. Damon guided her up the 3 steps to the porch. The Blackthorn enforcers could walk within 10 feet of this place and never see it. Magic. Of a sort. He pushed open the door, and heat washed over them. A fire crackled in a stone hearth, filling the single-room cabin with dancing light. The old packs knew things we've forgotten. This sanctuary is one of their gifts. Arya stepped inside, and her legs finally gave out. She would have hit the floor if Damon hadn't swept her up, carrying her the final few steps to a low couch near the fire. He set her down with surprising gentleness, then moved to a shelf stocked with supplies. That wound needs cleaning, he said, returning with bandages and a bottle of something that smelled medicinal. You're going to have to let me look at it. I'm fine. You're bleeding through your shirt, and you can barely stand. Lie to someone else. Arya glared at him, but she didn't have the energy to argue. With shaking hands, she lifted the hem of her ruined shirt. The fabric had stuck to the wound, and peeling it away sent fresh agony through her system. Damon's jaw tightened when he saw the damage. 4 parallel gashes, deep enough to expose muscle. They should have been healing by now. Her wolf should have handled this automatically. But the wounds remained open, angry, refusing to close. Why isn't it healing? Arya whispered. Because you're fighting your own power. Damon knelt beside the couch, his hands steady as he began cleaning the wound. His touch was clinical, efficient, but Arya couldn't ignore the way her skin seemed to wake up everywhere he made contact. Your wolf wants to heal you, but she can't while you're choking her down. You're so afraid of what you are that you'd rather die than let her surface. You don't understand. Try me. Arya closed her eyes. When I shift, things happen. Wrong things. My wolf isn't normal. She's different. Bigger. Stronger. And there's this light that comes from inside me, this golden fire that burns everything around me. The last time I let her out fully, I set a training ground ablaze. 50-year-old trees turned to ash in seconds. I almost killed 3 pack members. But you didn't kill them. I came close enough. Damon was quiet for a moment, focused on wrapping bandages around her torso. His hands moved with practiced ease, like he'd done this 1,000 times before. What if I told you that fire wasn't a mistake? That it's exactly what you're meant to do? Then I'd say you're insane. He smiled. Actually smiled, and it transformed his severe face into something almost warm. Fair enough. But consider this. What if the reason you can't control your power is because you were never taught how? What if every pack you've ever known was too afraid to help you because they didn't understand what you are? And you do? Understand what I am. Those amber-silver eyes locked onto hers. You're a phoenix born. A bloodline everyone thought died out centuries ago. The last of your kind. And that golden fire inside you isn't a curse, Arya. It's a throne. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Phoenix born. Arya had heard the term exactly once in her life, in a children's story her mother used to tell. Tales of ancient wolves who carried the fire of the sun in their veins, who could burn away corruption and rise from death itself. Myths. Just myths. That's impossible, she said. Is it? Damon finished securing the bandage and sat back on his heels. Then explain why Marcus and 5 trained enforcers retreated the moment I arrived. Explain why your wounds glow gold when you're under extreme stress. Explain why every dominant alpha within 100 miles can feel your presence like a drumbeat in their blood. Arya's mouth went dry. What are you saying? I'm saying that you're not broken. You're not cursed. You're powerful in a way that threatens the current order, and that's why they want you dead. Because if the packs realized what you are, if they understood that the Phoenix-born have returned, everything would change. Territory lines. Power structures. Everything. He leaned forward, close enough that she could see the silver flecks in his amber eyes, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. And I'm saying that I didn't spend 3 months tracking you just to watch you bleed out in the rain. You have a choice to make, Arya. Keep running, keep hiding, keep pretending you're something small and safe. Or stop. Stand up. And let me show you what you're really capable of. Why? The question burst out of her. Why do you care? What am I to you? Something shifted in Damon's expression. A crack in the armor. For just a moment, she saw something raw and aching beneath the alpha dominance. Because I've been where you are, he said quietly. Cast out. Hunted. Told I was too dangerous to exist. And I spent years believing them. Until I realized that the thing that made me dangerous was the same thing that made me free. You want to know why I care? Because watching you die would be like watching myself die. And I've done enough dying for one lifetime. The fire crackled. Rain hammered on the roof. And Arya stared at this stranger who spoke her pain like he'd lived inside her skin. Get some rest, Damon said, standing. Your body needs time to recover. We'll talk more when you're stronger. Where are you going? To make sure we weren't followed. I'll be back before dawn. He moved toward the door, and Arya's voice stopped him. Damon. He turned. Thank you. For not letting me die alone in the mud. His eyes held hers for a long moment. You were never going to die alone, Arya. I wouldn't have allowed it. Then he was gone, slipping out into the storm like he was part of it. Arya lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, feeling the bandages tight around her middle and the warmth of the fire on her skin. Her mind spun with everything he'd said. Phoenix born. Ancient bloodline. A throne made of golden fire. It was impossible. It had to be impossible. But deep in her chest, beneath the fear and the doubt, her wolf was stirring. And for the first time in months, she wasn't screaming to be free. She was purring. Arya dreamed of fire. She was 6 years old again, standing in her childhood bedroom while her mother lay dying in the next room. The fever had taken hold 3 days ago, and no healer could break it. Her mother's skin burned so hot it hurt to touch, and her eyes had gone distant, seeing things no one else could see. Arya. Her mother's voice was a thread-worn whisper. Come here, darling. Little Arya climbed onto the bed, careful not to jostle her mother's fragile frame. Her mother's hand found hers, squeezed with surprising strength. I need to tell you something important. Her mother's eyes, fever-bright and golden, locked onto hers. You're going to be different from other children. Special. And that's going to frighten people. Different how, Mama? You have a gift inside you. A fire that lives in your blood. It came from me, and from my mother before me, going back generations to when our kind walked as legends. Her mother coughed, a wet, terrible sound. But the world forgot about us. They thought we were gone. And maybe it's better that way. Safer. I don't understand. You will. Someday. Her mother's grip tightened. Promise me something, Arya. Promise me you'll hide your light. Bury it deep. Don't let them see what you are until you're strong enough to defend it. Because they'll try to snuff you out. They'll call you dangerous. Wrong. Too much. Who will, Mama? Everyone. The word was heavy with sorrow. Everyone who fears what they can't control. But you're not wrong, my darling. You're extraordinary. And when the time comes, when you meet someone who sees you for what you truly are, don't run. Don't hide. Let yourself burn. Arya had promised. She'd held her mother's hand as the fever took her, as the golden light faded from her eyes and left them empty. She'd promised to hide, to stay small, to survive. She'd kept that promise for 17 years. Until the harvest gathering. The dream shifted, twisted, became memory. Arya stood in the center of the training ground, surrounded by her pack. The Silverpine Wolves had gathered for their annual harvest celebration, a tradition that combined feasting with demonstrations of strength. Young wolves were expected to spar, to prove their worth to the pack hierarchy. Arya had been matched against Jackson, a cocky enforcer in training who outweighed her by 60 pounds. She'd known he would play dirty. Known he'd try to humiliate her. She'd prepared herself for pain, for embarrassment, for the kind of casual cruelty that dominant wolves showed to those they considered weak. She hadn't prepared for him to mention her mother. "Heard your mom died screaming," Jackson said as they circled each other. The crowd pressed close, eager for blood sport. "Heard the fever made her crazy. Bet that runs in the family." Arya's vision had gone red. Not with anger, but with something else. Something older. Her wolf surged forward before she could stop her, and the shift came faster than it ever had before. But it wasn't a normal shift. Her wolf erupted from her skin in a cascade of golden light. Bigger than any wolf in the pack. Stronger. And wreathed in flames that burned without smoke, without heat, but with an intensity that made every wolf in the vicinity stumble backward. Jackson had frozen, his eyes wide with terror. The enforcers had moved forward to intervene, but the moment they got within 10 feet of Arya's wolf, their own wolves had forced them to submit. To bow. Like she was alpha over them all. The training ground caught fire. Not normal fire, but golden flames that consumed wood and earth and left only glass-smooth ash in their wake. Arya had fought to regain control, to force her wolf back down, but the power had its own momentum. It wanted out. It wanted to burn everything that had ever hurt her. She'd managed to pull it back at the last second. Had forced the shift to reverse, had swallowed the flames back down. But the damage was done. The circle of wolves stared at her like she'd sprouted a second head. Elder Morrison, the pack's spiritual leader, had taken one look at her and raised his hand in an ancient warding gesture. "Corruption," he'd whispered. "The golden sickness. It's in her blood." Within an hour, Arya had been dragged before the Alpha Council. Within 2 hours, they'd given her the choice. Exile or execution. She'd chosen exile. She'd been running ever since. Arya woke to gray morning light filtering through the cabin windows. Her body ached, but the pain was different now. Manageable. She touched her side and felt only tenderness where the wounds had been. The bandages were clean, dry. No blood. She was healing. Finally. The cabin was empty. No sign of Damon. Arya sat up slowly, taking in her surroundings with clear eyes for the first time. The space was simple but well-maintained. Herbs hung drying from the rafters. Books lined one wall, their spines cracked with use. In the corner sat a small kitchen area with a wood-burning stove. On the table near the couch, someone had left food. Fresh bread. Cheese. An apple. Her stomach growled, reminding her she hadn't eaten in over 24 hours. Arya ate mechanically, her mind elsewhere. Phoenix born. The term rattled around in her skull. She tried to remember everything her mother had told her, every fragment of those old stories. Phoenix wolves were said to be the first shifters, created by the sun itself to protect the wild places. They could burn away sickness, could purify corruption, could rise from death through flame. Myths wrapped in metaphor. Nothing more. Except her wolf was wrong. Too big. Too bright. Too powerful. Except she'd set a training ground on fire without meaning to. Except her blood glowed gold when she bled. The door opened. Arya tensed, but it was only Damon, carrying an armload of firewood. He looked like he hadn't slept, dark circles under his eyes and his hair disheveled. But when he saw her sitting up, eating, something in his expression eased. "You're awake. Good." He dumped the wood by the hearth. "How do you feel?" "Better. The wounds are closing. Because you slept. Because you stopped fighting your wolf long enough to let her do her job." He crossed to the kitchen, began preparing tea. "You'll be fully healed by nightfall." Arya watched him move through the space with comfortable familiarity. "How long have you had this place?" 6 years. I built it after. He paused. "After I left my old pack. You were exiled too." In a manner of speaking. He poured hot water over tea leaves, and the scent of chamomile filled the cabin. "I was beta to an alpha who didn't appreciate wolves who questioned his authority. When I spoke up about his treatment of weaker pack members, he gave me a choice. Submit or leave. You chose to leave. I chose to survive." Damon brought her the tea, settled into a chair across from her. "Submission isn't freedom. It's just a cage you're taught to call home." The words resonated somewhere deep. Arya wrapped her hands around the warm mug, let the heat seep into her palms. You said you've been tracking me for 3 months. What made you come looking in the first place? A rumor reached me about a wolf who manifested golden fire at a harvest gathering, who made enforcers submit without trying, who burned ancient ground and left it pure. His amber eyes studied her. Phoenix-born are supposed to be extinct. The last verified case was over 200 years ago. But I'd spent years researching the old bloodlines, trying to understand my own complications. When I heard about you, I had to know if it was real. What complications? Damon smiled, but there was no humor in it. You're not the only one with power that frightens people. Why do you think I live alone in the woods, warded by ancient magic? Why do you think other alphas avoid this territory? He set down his tea and met her eyes. Then, deliberately, he let his control slip. The air in the cabin changed, became dense, heavy with a presence that made Arya's wolf sit up and take notice. Damon's eyes bled from amber to pure silver, bright as molten metal. And around him, shadows began to move. Not normal shadows. These writhed like living things, flowing around his body in patterns that suggested intelligence. They licked at the edges of his form, and where they touched, reality seemed to warp slightly. Shadow Walker, Arya whispered. Another myth made flesh. The technical term is Umbra-born, Damon said, and his voice held an echo now, like two people speaking in harmony. We're supposedly extinct too. Our bloodline was hunted down during the purges 4 centuries ago because people thought we were corrupted by dark magic. He pulled his power back and the shadows retreated. But we weren't corrupted. We were just different. And difference is dangerous to those who want everyone to fit into neat little boxes. Arya stared at him with new understanding. That's why you came for me. Not just because of what I am, but because you know what it's like to be hunted for your blood. Yes. And that's why Marcus and the enforcers ran. They felt your power. Dominant predators recognize apex predators. On an instinctive level, they know I could tear them apart before they landed a single blow. So they run. He leaned forward. But Arya, you need to understand something. I'm not interested in being your savior or your teacher or anything that puts me above you. I'm interested in survival. Yours and mine. Because alone, we're targets. Together, we might actually have a chance. A chance at what? At changing things. At making a world where wolves like us don't have to hide. His voice went fierce. At showing every pack that exile and execution aren't the only options for those of us born different. It was a beautiful dream. A terrifying dream. I don't know how to control my power, Arya admitted quietly. I don't know how to shift without burning everything around me. What use am I to anyone if I can't even manage the basics? That's because no one ever taught you. Your mother died before she could show you the way, and every pack after that was too afraid to try. Damon stood, offered his hand. But I'm not afraid. And I know someone who might be able to help. Arya looked at his outstretched hand. This was the second time he'd offered it. The second time she had to choose between the safety of staying small and the terrifying possibility of becoming something more. Her mother's dying words echoed in her mind. When you meet someone who sees you for what you truly are, don't run. Don't hide. Let yourself burn. Arya took his hand. They left the cabin at dusk, moving through the forest on paths only Damon seemed to know. Arya had expected them to head toward civilization, toward some city where this mysterious helper might live. Instead, Damon led her deeper into the wilderness, into places where the trees grew so thick they blocked out the sky. Where are we going? Arya asked for the 3rd time. The Whispering Grove, Damon replied, pushing aside a branch heavy with moss. It's a sacred place. One of the old sites where the first packs made their covenants with the land. I thought those were destroyed during the purges. Most were. This one survived because the wolves who protected it were willing to die for it. And they did. His voice went quiet. The grove remembers them. It honors their sacrifice. They walked for hours as darkness gathered around them. Arya's healed wounds ached with the exertion, but she pushed through the discomfort. Her wolf was restless, pacing beneath her skin. Ever since waking in the cabin, her wolf had been different. Less frantic. More focused. Like she'd been waiting for this moment. The forest began to change. The trees here were massive, ancient beyond measure. Their trunks were wider than a car, their branches reaching up and up until they disappeared into shadow. The air tasted different too. Charged. Like the moment before lightning strikes. "We're close," Damon said, and his voice held a note of reverence Arya had never heard from him before. They crested a small hill, and Arya's breath caught. The Whispering Grove lay in a natural valley, illuminated by thousands of bioluminescent flowers that grew nowhere else. They cast a soft blue-green glow that made the entire space feel otherworldly. At the center of the grove stood a circle of 7 stones, each one carved with symbols Arya didn't recognize, but somehow understood. Around the stones grew a massive tree, its silver bark gleaming in the strange light. "The Covenant Tree," Damon said softly. "It's older than any pack. Older than written history. Some say it's where the first wolf learned to shift, where human and beast became one." Arya felt pulled toward it. Her wolf was straining now, desperate to get closer. She took a step forward, then another, and Damon didn't stop her. The grove seemed to breathe as she entered. The flowers pulsed with light in rhythm with her heartbeat. The air hummed with energy that raised goosebumps along her arms. And the Covenant Tree. The tree was watching her. Not with eyes, but with awareness. Arya could feel its attention like a physical weight, ancient and knowing and impossibly patient. She walked to the circle of stones, and without quite meaning to, stepped inside. The world exploded into golden light. Arya gasped as power surged through her body. Not her power, but something older. Something that recognized her blood and claimed her as kin. The symbols on the stones began to glow, responding to her presence. And in her mind, voices whispered. Not words exactly, but impressions. Memories that didn't belong to her but felt true nonetheless. She saw wolves running through moonlit forests, their bodies wreathed in flames of every color. Gold and silver and crimson and white. She saw a great gathering at this very tree, where the first alphas made their vows to protect the wild places, to honor the balance between human and beast. She saw a woman standing where Arya now stood, her hair like spun copper and her eyes burning with golden fire. The woman was pregnant, her hand resting on her swollen belly, and she was smiling even as tears ran down her face. "The Phoenix line will endure," the woman said, her voice echoing across centuries. "Through darkness and exile, through fire and blood, my daughters will carry the flame forward. And when the time of reckoning comes, when the old powers rise and the world needs guardians once more, one will stand at the crossroads. She will be hunted. She will be alone. She will doubt everything she is. But if she chooses to burn, if she chooses to rise, the world itself will transform." The vision shattered. Arya found herself on her knees in the stone circle, gasping for air. Her skin was glowing, veins lit up like lightning beneath her flesh. Golden light poured from her hands, from her eyes, pooling on the ground around her. Damon was at the edge of the circle, his expression caught between awe and something that looked like fear. "Arya, can you hear me?" She nodded, unable to form words. The power was too much, too big. It wanted to consume her, to burn through her flesh and remake her into something transcendent and terrible. "You need to breathe," Damon said urgently. "Ground yourself. Feel the earth beneath you. You're not the power. You're the vessel. There's a difference." Arya tried. She pressed her palms flat against the ground and felt soil, stone, the roots of the ancient tree spreading beneath her like a network of veins. She focused on the sensation of solid earth, of weight and mass and reality. Slowly, painfully, the light began to dim. "That's it," Damon encouraged. "Pull it back. You're in control." Was she, though? Because it didn't feel like control. It felt like she was trying to cage a wildfire with her bare hands. But gradually, breath by breath, The golden glow faded. Her veins stopped burning. The power retreated back into whatever dark place it lived inside her. Arya collapsed forward, catching herself on trembling arms. She felt hollowed out, scraped clean from the inside. "What was that?" she managed to whisper. "Recognition." A new voice spoke from the shadows beyond the grove. Female, aged, carrying authority that made even Damon straighten. "The grove has confirmed what we suspected. You are Phoenix-born, child. The first in 200 years. An old woman emerged from between the trees. She was tiny, barely 5 feet tall, with white hair that hung to her waist and eyes that had gone milky with cataracts. But she moved with the confidence of someone who could see far more than physical sight allowed. She wore robes the color of dried blood, and around her neck hung a pendant carved from what looked like bone. "Elder Morrigan," Damon said, inclining his head in respect. "Thank you for meeting us." As if I could refuse when the grove itself called to me. The old woman approached the stone circle, stopped just outside its boundary. Those blind eyes fixed on Arya with unnerving precision. "Stand up, girl. Let me look at you properly." Arya forced herself to her feet, though her legs shook with the effort. Elder Morrigan circled the stone boundary slowly, examining her from every angle. Yes, I can see it now. The mark is all over you." The elder reached out as if to touch Arya's face, then stopped, her hand hovering inches away. "The golden flame. The phoenix curse. Some would say you're blessed, child. Others would say you're damned. What do you say?" "I don't know what I am," Arya admitted. "I've spent my whole life being told I'm wrong. That my power is corruption. How am I supposed to believe I'm something sacred when everyone I've ever known has run from me in fear?" "Because fear and reverence often look the same," Morrigan replied. "The packs today have forgotten what your bloodline means. They've forgotten the old stories, the old ways. But I remember. I'm old enough to have spoken with wolves who spoke with wolves who knew the last phoenix born. And I can tell you what you are if you're willing to hear it." Arya nodded, not trusting her voice. Morrigan began to speak, and her voice took on the cadence of a storyteller reciting ancient truth. "In the beginning, when the first wolves learned to walk as men, there was chaos. The shift was agony. Many died, unable to reconcile the two halves of their nature. But then came the Phoenix-born, gifted by the sun itself with fire that could burn away the corruption, that could purify the transformation. They were healers, warriors, judges who could see into a wolf's soul and know their truth. For generations, they maintained the balance." The elder's expression darkened. "But power breeds fear, and fear breeds violence. Other packs grew jealous. They whispered that the Phoenix-born had too much influence, that they threatened the natural order. During the Great Purge, they were hunted down, exterminated. The last Phoenix wolf died defending this very grove, and with her death, the bloodline was thought extinct. But it wasn't," Arya said quietly. "My mother. Her mother. We survived. You survived by hiding, by making yourself small, by swallowing your fire until you nearly choked on it." Morrigan's blind eyes glistened. "And now you stand here, confused and afraid, because no one taught you what you're meant to do with that power. No one showed you its purpose." "Then tell me," Arya pleaded. "Because I've spent 23 years being afraid of myself. I need to know if there's a reason for all of this. A reason I have to carry this curse." "It's not a curse, child. It's a calling." Morrigan finally stepped into the stone circle, and the moment her foot crossed the boundary, the grove responded. The flowers brightened. The covenant tree's branches rustled though there was no wind. "You were born at a time when the wolf packs have grown corrupt. Alphas abuse their power. The weak are cast out. Territory wars destroy innocent lives. The balance your ancestors maintained has been shattered, and the world is suffering for it." The elder took Arya's hands in hers. Her grip was stronger than it had any right to be. "The grove has been waiting for you. The old powers have been waiting. And now you're here, standing at the crossroads just as the prophecy foretold. You can choose to keep running, to keep hiding your fire. Or you can choose to burn. To become what you were always meant to be. And what's that? A reckoning. Morrigan's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the entire grove. The phoenix rises from ashes, child. You are the fire that cleanses, the flame that purifies. And the packs that cast you out, that hunted you, that tried to extinguish your light, they will bow before you or burn. That is your birthright. That is your destiny. The words should have sounded triumphant. Instead, they felt like a sentence. Arya pulled her hands free, wrapped her arms around herself. I don't want to make anyone bow. I don't want to burn anything. I just want to exist without being hunted. Peace is earned, not given, Damon said quietly from the edge of the circle. You think I wanted to live in isolation? To be alone because my power frightened people? But I learned that hiding doesn't protect you. It just delays the inevitable. Sooner or later, you have to decide what you're willing to fight for. And if I'm not a fighter, then you'll die. Morrigan's bluntness cut like a blade. The Blackthorn Pack knows you're alive. They'll hunt you. And when they can't find you, they'll expand their search. They'll spread word of the corrupted wolf with golden fire. Other packs will join the hunt. You'll be running for the rest of your life, always looking over your shoulder, always waiting for the moment they catch you. Is that the existence you want? No. Gods, no. But the alternative terrified her more. Embracing her power meant accepting what she was. It meant standing in front of everyone who'd ever rejected her and saying, yes, I am different, and I'm not sorry for it. It meant becoming the thing they all feared. I need time, Arya said. To think. To process all of this. Morrigan studied her for a long moment, then nodded. The grove has given you its blessing. That won't fade. When you're ready to claim your power, truly claim it, return here. I'll teach you the old ways. I'll show you how to control the flame instead of being controlled by it. But child, don't take too long. The world won't wait for you to feel ready. Prophecy has a way of forcing your hand. With that ominous proclamation, the elder turned and walked back into the shadows. Within moments, she disappeared completely, as if the forest had swallowed her whole. Arya and Damon stood in the grove, surrounded by glowing flowers and ancient power. The weight of destiny pressed down on Arya's shoulders like a physical thing. She's dramatic, Damon said eventually, breaking the silence. But she's not wrong. You have maybe a week, 2 at most, before the hunts intensify. We need a plan. What kind of plan? The kind where you stop being prey and start being something they have to respect. He moved into the circle, stood facing her. You asked me earlier why I came for you. The full truth is that I've been waiting for someone like you. Someone with power that matches their conviction. Someone who might be willing to stand against the old order and say, this isn't working anymore. Alone, I'm just an exile with control issues. But with you? With a phoenix born. His eyes blazed with silver light. We could change everything. Arya wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe she could be something more than a frightened girl running from her own shadow. But belief was hard when you'd spent your entire life being told you were wrong. What if I embrace this power and it destroys me? She whispered. What if the fire burns so hot that there's nothing left of who I am? Damon reached out, tilted her chin up until she had to meet his eyes. Then I'll be there to pull you back. That's what pack means. That's what we can be to each other. Not alpha and omega, not master and student. Equals. Partners. 2 people who understand what it means to carry power that frightens the world. His touch was warm, solid, real. And in his eyes, she saw truth. He wasn't promising to save her or fix her or make her into something palatable for the masses. He was offering to stand beside her while she burned, to weather the flames without running. It was the first honest thing anyone had offered her in years. Okay, Arya said, and the word felt like jumping off a cliff. Okay, teach me. Show me how to control this. And then we'll see about changing things. Damon smiled, and it transformed his entire face. Made him look younger, less burdened. That's all I'm asking. A chance to see what we can become. They left the Whispering Grove as the first hints of dawn touched the eastern sky. The flowers dimmed, returning to dormancy. The Covenant tree stood silent, keeping its ancient vigils. But something had shifted. Arya could feel it in her bones. She'd stepped into that circle as a victim, as someone running from her fate. She was leaving it as something else entirely. The question was, what would she become when the fire finally caught? 3 days. That's how long they had before everything went to hell. Arya spent those days training with Daemon at the cabin, learning the basics of power control that should have been taught to her as a child. He showed her meditation techniques to separate her consciousness from her wolf's instincts. He taught her breathing exercises to channel the fire instead of suppressing it. And slowly, painfully, she began to understand that her power wasn't the enemy. Her fear was. Again, Daemon said, standing 20 feet away in the clearing behind the cabin. This time, don't pull back when you feel the heat rising. Lean into it. Let it flow through you instead of trying to dam it up. Arya closed her eyes and reached for her wolf. The shift came easier now, though it still hurt. Her bones restructured, her muscles lengthened, and golden light flickered beneath her fur. She emerged as a wolf larger than any natural animal had a right to be, with eyes that glowed like molten metal. The fire wanted to come. She could feel it building in her chest, pressing against her ribs, demanding release. Every instinct screamed at her to force it back down, to cage it, to make herself small and safe. But Daemon's voice cut through the panic. You are not your fear, Arya. You are what you choose to be. Now burn. She let go. Golden flames erupted from her body, pouring off her fur in waves. But instead of wild, uncontrollable destruction, the fire moved with purpose. It flowed out, touched the ground, and where it landed, flowers bloomed. Not burning. Not destroying. Creating. Arya shifted back to human, staring at the circle of new growth around her. Small purple flowers pushed up through dead leaves, reaching for sunlight. I did that, she whispered, disbelieving. You did that, Daemon confirmed, and his voice held pride. Phoenix fire doesn't just destroy. It cleanses and renews. You can burn away corruption, but you can also breathe life into dead ground. That's what the Pax forgot. That's why they fear you. Because you represent change, and change is terrifying to those who benefit from things staying the same. Arya touched one of the new flowers, marveling at its softness. For the first time in her life, her power didn't feel like a curse. It felt like possibility. That was when the howls started. Daemon's head snapped up, his body going rigid. We need to move. Now. What? Hunting party. Big one. He was already pulling her toward the cabin. They found us faster than I expected. Must have brought a tracker. They burst through the cabin door, and Daemon immediately started gathering supplies. Weapons. Food. A small pack of essentials. His movements were efficient, practiced, the actions of someone who'd run before. How many? Arya asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. At least 15. Maybe 20. He tossed her a leather jacket reinforced with steel plates. They're coming from the east, moving fast. We have maybe 10 minutes before they surround this place. But the wards won't matter if they have an elder with them. I'm picking up old magic in their group, the kind that can unravel protective spells. Daemon shouldered the pack, his expression grim. We can't fight them here. Too many, and they have the advantage of numbers. We need to run, get to ground we control. Arya's wolf snarled inside her. She was tired of running, tired of being hunted like prey. 3 days of training, and she'd finally started to feel like maybe, just maybe, she could be something other than a victim. And now they wanted her to flee again. No, she heard herself say. Daemon stopped. Turned. What? I said no. Arya's hands were shaking, but her voice was firm. I'm done running. If they want me, they're going to have to go through me first. Arya, you've had 3 days of training. They have enforcers, experienced fighters. And I have fire that makes flowers bloom in dead ground. She met his eyes. You told me I represent change. You told me I could be something more than a frightened girl hiding from my shadow. Well, I'm choosing to believe you. Right here. Right now. I'm choosing to burn. Daemon stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Then, slowly, A fierce smile spread across his face. You realize this is insane. Completely. We could die. We could run forever and still die. At least this way, we die on our feet. He laughed, sharp and surprised. All right then. If we're doing this, we do it smart. Let them come to us. Funnel them through the clearing where you have room to move. I'll handle crowd control with the shadows. You focus on not burning down the forest. I'll do my best. That's all any of us can do. They took positions at the edge of the clearing, backs to the cabin. The howls were closer now, aggressive and coordinated. These weren't wild animals hunting. These were soldiers executing a mission. The first wolves emerged from the tree line. Massive creatures with eyes that glowed amber and silver. They moved in formation, spreading out to surround the clearing. Behind them came more. 15. 20. 25. Too many to count. And then, stepping between two large enforcers, came a man Arya recognized. Alpha Donovan of the Blackthorn Pack. He was tall, barrel-chested, with gray streaking his black hair and scars crisscrossing his bare arms. He looked at Arya with the expression of someone who'd found a rabid dog that needed to be put down. Arya Ashworth, he called out, his voice carrying easily across the clearing. By order of the Northern Pack Council, you are under arrest for crimes against Pack law. Surrender peacefully, and you'll be given a fair trial before execution. That's generous, Arya called back, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. But I think I'll pass. Alpha Donovan's expression hardened. You've endangered Pack members, manifested forbidden magic, and fled justice. You don't get a choice anymore. Stand down, or we'll put you down. There's that charm I've heard so much about, Damon said loud enough for everyone to hear. He stepped forward, and shadows began to writhe around his body. But here's a counteroffer. You turn around, walk away, and we forget you ever trespassed on protected ground. Because if you force this fight, Alpha, a lot of your people are going to die. Recognition flashed in Donovan's eyes. Shadow Walker. I should have known. Only something corrupted would defend her. He gestured to his wolves. Kill them both. Make it quick. The enforcers moved as one, closing the distance in coordinated rushes. Damon's shadows exploded outward, forming a wall of living darkness that the first wave crashed into. Wolves yelped as the shadows grabbed them, held them, drained their strength with every moment of contact. But more kept coming. Too many for even Damon's power to stop. An enforcer broke through, charged directly at Arya with jaws wide. She could see his teeth, smell his breath, feel her wolf's instinct to flee screaming in her veins. Instead, she chose to burn. The shift came faster than thought. One moment she was human, the next she was wolf, and golden fire erupted from her body in a wave that lit up the entire clearing. The charging enforcer yelped and tried to stop, but momentum carried him forward into the flames. They didn't burn his fur, didn't char his flesh. Instead, the fire washed over him like water, and where it touched, Arya could see something else. The enforcer's wolf spirit, bright and pure beneath layers of aggression and fear. The fire burned away his rage, his conditioning, his blind obedience to alpha commands. He collapsed, shifting back to human, staring at his hands like he'd never seen them before. What did you do to me? He whispered. I showed you the truth, Arya said, her wolf's voice carrying words it shouldn't have been able to form. You don't have to be a weapon. You can choose. Alpha Donovan roared in fury. Don't let the fire touch you. Bring her down from range. 3 wolves circled wide, then lunged from different angles. Arya's new instincts kicked in. She called the fire and directed it, not as a weapon but as a shield. Flames formed a barrier that the attackers couldn't cross, and when they tried, the purifying light showed them exactly what they'd become. One by one, the enforcers who touched her fire collapsed, freed from whatever mental conditioning kept them loyal to a cruel alpha. But not all of them stopped. Some were too far gone, too steeped in violence to be reached by her flames. They saw what happened to their pack mates and adjusted their strategy, staying at range, trying to wear her down through sheer numbers. Damon was fighting his own battle. Shadows had engulfed half the clearing, pulling wolves into darkness where they emerged confused and disoriented. But Arya could see the strain on his face. He was burning through power too fast, pushing himself beyond his limits. Alpha Donovan watched the chaos with cold calculation. Then he shifted, his transformation massive and brutal. His wolf was easily twice the size of any enforcer, battle-scarred and vicious. He charged straight through the shadow barrier like it was nothing, his alpha will so strong it shattered Damon's control. He was heading straight for Arya. She braced herself, called every ounce of fire she could summon. But Donovan was fast, experienced, and he'd been killing for longer than she'd been alive. He hit her like a freight train, jaws closing around her shoulder, teeth sinking deep. Pain exploded through her system. Arya screamed, the sound half human, half wolf. Blood poured down her fur, hot and thick. Donovan shook her like a rag doll, trying to break her neck. But the pain triggered something deeper. Something primal. Arya's fire detonated. Not in a controlled wave, but in an explosion that sent every wolf in the clearing stumbling backward. Golden light burst from her body with such intensity that for a moment, the night turned to day. Donovan yelped and released her, his muzzle singed. Arya shifted back to human, clutching her bleeding shoulder. The wound should have been fatal. Should have had her unconscious from blood loss. But the fire in her veins was already working, sealing tissue, knitting muscle back together. She could feel her wolf's healing amplified 100-fold by her phoenix blood. You can't win, Donovan snarled, shifting back to human himself. Blood dripped from his mouth, her blood. Even if you kill me, the council will send more. They'll hunt you until you're ash and memory. You're a threat to pack law itself. Arya struggled to her feet, her legs shaking but holding. Your pack law is what's corrupt. You rule through fear and violence. You cast out anyone who's different. You've turned being a wolf into a prison instead of a gift. That's survival. Donovan spat blood. The weak fall so the strong can lead. That's nature. That's truth. That's a lie. The words came from one of the fallen enforcers, the first one her fire had touched. He'd shifted back to human, was sitting on the ground staring at his alpha with new eyes. I've been following you for 6 years, Alpha. Following orders without question. But she showed me what I've become. What we've all become. Weapons. Not wolves. Just weapons. Traitor, Donovan hissed. No. Finally free. The enforcer stood on unsteady legs. I'm done. I'm done being your soldier. Another enforcer shifted to human. Then another. The wolves who'd been touched by Arya's fire were waking up, really waking up for the first time in years. And they were looking at their alpha with horror and recognition. Donovan saw his pack crumbling. Saw his authority dissolving like smoke. And in that moment, Arya understood that this was what really terrified alphas about Phoenixborn. Not the fire. Not the power. The truth. If you want to kill me, Arya said, you're going to have to do it yourself. But know this. Every wolf you've hurt, every person you've broken, every life you've destroyed in the name of pack law, they all see you now. Your own wolves see you. And they're not going to forget. Donovan's face twisted with rage. He shifted again, prepared to tear her apart with his bare teeth. But before he could move, Damon's shadows erupted beneath him, wrapping around his legs, his chest, pulling him down. I don't think so, Damon said, his voice strained with effort. The shadows were barely holding. Donovan was too strong, too determined. Arya, you need to end this. Now. While I have him. End it. The words hung heavy in the air. Arya looked at the struggling alpha, at the monster who'd hunted her through the rain, who would have killed her without mercy. She could feel her fire responding, ready to burn him to ash. It would be easy. Justified. He'd murdered people. Ruined lives. The world would be better without him. But looking at the freed enforcers, at the wolves who'd been given a second chance to choose their own path, Arya realized something. She wasn't an executioner. She was a catalyst. Let him go, Arya said. Damon's head whipped around. What? Let him go. But not because he deserves mercy. Arya addressed Donovan directly, her voice ringing with authority that surprised even her. You're going to leave. You're going to return to your pack and tell them exactly what happened here. Tell them that a Phoenix-born defeated your forces without killing a single wolf. Tell them that your own enforcers chose to stand down rather than keep serving you. And tell them that things are changing. The old way, the way of fear and violence and blind obedience, that's dying. And no amount of force is going to stop it. Donovan stared at her with pure hatred. But beneath the hate, she saw something else. Fear. Because he knew she was right. Damon slowly released the shadows. Donovan stumbled forward, shifted back to human, his body covered in cuts and bruises from the fight. He looked at his scattered pack, at the enforcers who wouldn't meet his eyes, and something in him broke. This isn't over, he said, but the words had no heat. Yes, Arya replied quietly. It is. Donovan turned and limped back into the forest. A few loyal enforcers followed him, but more than half stayed behind, standing in the clearing like they didn't know what to do with their newfound freedom. One of them, a young woman with bright red hair, approached Arya cautiously. What happens to us now? We can't go back. Donovan will see us as traitors. Arya looked at Damon, who shrugged, leaving the decision to her. She turned back to the gathered wolves. Now you choose. For the first time in your lives, you get to choose what kind of wolf you want to be. You can find new packs, ones that will treat you with dignity. Or you can stay with us. Help us build something different. Something better. But whatever you decide, it has to be your choice. Not mine. Not any alphas. Yours. The wolves exchanged glances. Some nodded. Others looked uncertain. But for the first time, they looked like people instead of soldiers. As dawn broke over the clearing, Arya surveyed the aftermath of the battle. The ground was scorched in places, flowers blooming in others. Damon stood beside her, exhausted but alive. And around them, wolves who'd been enemies an hour ago were now talking, questioning, choosing. You realize what you just did, Damon said softly. You started a revolution. I gave them a choice. That's all. That's everything. He touched her uninjured shoulder gently. The council isn't going to let this stand. When word spreads that Phoenix-born have returned, that wolves are defecting from packs, they'll come for you with everything they have. Let them come. Arya felt her fire burning steady in her chest, no longer a curse to be hidden, but a strength to be wielded. I'm done running. I'm done hiding. If they want to fight, we'll fight. But we'll fight for something worth fighting for. Freedom. Choice. The right to be different without being destroyed for it. Damon smiled, fierce and proud. Then I'll stand with you. However this ends. However this ends, Arya echoed. The sun rose over the clearing, painting everything gold. And in that moment, bleeding and exhausted and surrounded by wolves who'd chosen hope over fear, Arya felt something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. The safe house was a cabin even more remote than the first. Damon had led them here after the battle, a 3-hour trek through dense forest that left everyone exhausted. The freed enforcers, 12 in total who'd chosen to come with them, collapsed as soon as they arrived, too tired to do anything but sleep. Arya sat by the fireplace, unable to rest despite the bone-deep weariness. Her shoulder had healed during the walk, Phoenix fire sealing the wound Alpha Donovan had torn open. But the emotional aftermath of the fight sat heavy in her chest. She'd almost killed him. Would have if she'd let her rage take control. The power had been there, ready, eager to burn him to nothing. And part of her had wanted to make him pay for every moment of terror he'd put her through. But she'd chosen differently. And she didn't know if that made her strong or foolish. You're thinking too loud. Damon emerged from the shadows, carrying 2 mugs of something that smelled like herbs and honey. He handed her one and settled into the chair across from her. I can hear your thoughts from across the room. Can you also hear me wondering if I made a mistake? Arya wrapped her hands around the warm mug, letting Donovan live. He's going to regroup, come back with reinforcements. I gave him the chance to destroy us. Maybe. Or maybe you showed him that he's already lost. That his entire worldview is crumbling. Damon sipped his drink. Phoenix fire doesn't just burn bodies, Arya. It burns lies. Every wolf who saw what you did tonight, who watched their pack mates choose freedom over following orders, they're going to remember. Word is going to spread. And when it does, Donovan is going to find it very hard to maintain control through fear alone. You're assuming people care more about freedom than safety. I'm assuming people care about truth. And you showed them truth tonight. The question is, what are you going to do with that power? Arya stared into the fire. I don't know. A week ago, I was just trying to survive. Now I'm apparently starting revolutions. Destiny has poor timing. The comment surprised a laugh out of her. Damon smiled at the sound, something warm flickering in his amber eyes. Can I ask you something? Arya said. Why did you really come looking for me? And don't give me the prepared answer about wanting allies or changing the system. What's the real reason? Damon was quiet for a long moment, his expression cycling through emotions too fast to name. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. Because I know what it's like to believe you're broken. To think that the thing inside you that makes you different is something shameful that needs to be hidden or destroyed. I lived like that for years. Hating myself, hating my power, wishing I could cut it out of my blood and be normal. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. And then one day I realized that the people who told me I was broken were the actual problem. That I wasn't defective. I was just inconvenient. My power threatened their authority, so they convinced me it was wrong. When I finally saw through that lie, I stopped running. Started living. But it took me 10 years to get there. 10 years of suffering because no one had the courage to tell me the truth. His eyes met hers, intense and honest. When I heard about you, about a phoenix born who was being hunted for the crime of existing, I couldn't let you waste 10 years like I did. I couldn't watch another person with extraordinary power convince themselves they were a monster. So yes, I want allies. Yes, I want to change the system. But more than that, I wanted to save you from the same hell I put myself through. And maybe, in doing that, save myself too. The confession hung in the air between them. Arya felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been locked tight for so long she'd forgotten it was there. I spent my whole life believing I was too much, she said quietly. Too powerful. Too dangerous. Too different. I made myself smaller, quieter, less. I apologized for existing. And even when I finally manifested my power, even when I couldn't hide anymore, I still thought the problem was me. That I needed to be fixed or controlled or eliminated. She met Damon's eyes. But you looked at me like I was something magnificent instead of something broken. And I didn't know how to handle that. Didn't know if I could trust it. And now? Now I'm starting to think maybe you see something I couldn't see myself. Something true. She set down her mug, leaned forward. But I need to know. When you look at me, are you seeing me? Or are you seeing what I could be useful for? Because I've been used before, Damon. People who wanted my power but not my person. I can't do that again. His hand reached across the space between them, palm up. An offering, not a demand. I see you, Arya. The scared part and the brave part. The fire and the doubt. The woman who makes flowers bloom in dead ground and the girl who just wants to stop running. All of it. That's what I see. Arya looked at his hand. Thought about trust and risk and the terrifying possibility of letting someone in. She took his hand. The moment their skin touched, that same electric connection from before sparked to life. But this time, Arya didn't pull away. She let herself feel it, this impossible bond that had been growing between them since he'd pulled her out of the rain. I'm scared, she admitted. Of this. Of you. Of what I feel when you look at me like that. Like what? Like I'm worth something. Like I matter beyond what I can do for you. Damon's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. You terrify me too, if it helps. Not your power. You. The way you make me want things I thought I'd given up on. Partnership. Purpose. Someone who understands the weight of carrying power that isolates you from everyone else. He pulled her gently closer until they were sharing the same space, breathing the same air. I can't promise this ends well. We're standing against forces that have controlled wolf society for centuries. We could lose, could die. But I can promise that whatever happens, I see you. And I'm choosing to stand beside you not because of what you can do, but because of who you are. Who am I? Arya whispered. Someone brave enough to burn when the world tells you to hide. Someone kind enough to spare an enemy who would have killed you without mercy. Someone strong enough to carry a prophecy, but humble enough to doubt yourself. His free hand came up, cupped her face. You're Arya. And that's enough. That's more than enough. The kiss happened without decision. One moment they were talking, the next their lips were touching, tentative and searching. Arya's fire rose in response, not destructive but warm, alive, celebrating. She could feel Daemon's shadows wrapping around them both, not confining but protecting, creating a space where they could exist without fear. The kiss deepened. Arya's hands found his hair, pulled him closer. Daemon's arm wrapped around her waist, solid and sure. For the first time since her mother died, Arya felt safe. Not because she was hidden or small or pretending to be something she wasn't, but because she was seen. Completely. And chosen anyway. They broke apart slowly, foreheads resting together, breathing hard. That was, Arya started. Complicated, Daemon finished. I was going to say perfect. He laughed, the sound vibrating through his chest. That too. But Arya, you need to understand something. If we do this, if we become this to each other, there's no going back. We'll be bound in ways that go beyond pack law or traditional mating. Phoenix and shadow. Fire and darkness. We'll be strongest together, but we'll also be targets together. Every enemy I've made, every alpha who fears you, they'll come for us as a unit. Are you trying to talk me out of this? I'm trying to make sure you know what you're choosing. Arya pulled back enough to look him in the eyes. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us. I'm choosing to stop letting fear make my decisions. And if that means we face enemies together, then so be it. I'm tired of being alone, Daemon. I'm tired of carrying everything by myself. You don't have to anymore. He kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. We carry it together now. Whatever comes. They sat together by the fire, wrapped in each other's arms, until the sun rose. And when the freed wolves woke, stumbling into the main room looking for food and answers, they found their unexpected leaders curled together on the couch, finally at peace. One of the wolves, the young woman with red hair, smiled at the sight. Maybe there's hope for us after all, she murmured to her companion. Maybe there was. The council came at dawn 3 days later. Not with enforcers or warriors, but with elders. 7 of them, ancient wolves who carried the weight of tradition like armor. They appeared at the edge of the clearing without warning, their presence announced only by the sudden hush that fell over the forest. Daemon felt them first. He'd been up early, checking the perimeter wards, when the hair on the back of his neck stood straight. Arya emerged from the cabin moments later, her fire already stirring in response to the threat. Stay calm, Daemon murmured as the freed wolves gathered behind them. Elders rarely attack directly. They prefer words as weapons. The eldest of the group stepped forward. He was impossibly old, his face a roadmap of wrinkles, his hair pure white. But his eyes were sharp as broken glass. Arya recognized him from pack gatherings when she was young. Elder Thaddeus, the head of the Northern Council. Phoenix-born, Thaddeus said, his voice carrying despite its age. Shadow Walker. And a collection of oathbreakers who abandoned their packs. Quite the gathering you've assembled. They didn't abandon, Arya replied, forcing her voice steady. They chose freedom over serving a corrupt alpha. They chose betrayal over loyalty. There's a difference. Thaddeus's gaze swept over the group, lingering on each freed wolf like he was cataloging their faces. But we're not here about them. We're here about you, child. About the danger you represent to pack stability. I haven't attacked anyone. I've defended myself. You exist. That alone is attack enough. Another elder spoke, a woman with silver streaks in her black hair. Arya didn't know her name, but recognized her as someone important. Phoenix-born were eliminated for a reason. Your bloodline threatened the natural order. You made Alpha's bow. You burned away pack bonds. You turned stable hierarchies into chaos. That's not what happened, Arya protested. Phoenix-born were healers. Protectors. They maintained balance, not destroyed it. They were tyrants. Thaddeus's voice went hard as stone. They claimed their fire gave them the right to judge others, to determine who was worthy and who was corrupt. They placed themselves above pack law, above alpha authority. And when the packs rose up against them, they burned entire territories to ash rather than submit to proper order. The words hit like physical blows. Arya had heard whispered versions of the story, dark rumors about why Phoenix-born were hunted to extinction. But hearing it from the council itself, stated as established fact, made it real in a way that terrified her. That's a lie, Daemon said, stepping forward. I've studied the old texts. Phoenix-born were eliminated because they threatened alpha power, not because they abused their own. The purges were political, not righteous. The Shadow Walker speaks of righteousness while hiding in darkness. A third elder, male and scarred, fixed his attention on Daemon. Your bloodline has its own history of corruption. Umbra-born who used shadow magic to assassinate rivals, to spy on packs, to undermine alpha authority from within. You're no innocent, boy. You're just better at hiding your crimes. Daemon's jaw clenched, but he didn't respond. Arya could feel his shadow stirring, agitated by the accusation. Thaddeus raised his hand for silence. We didn't come here to debate history. We came with an offer. Arya Ashworth, the council recognizes that you didn't ask for your bloodline. You were born with power you couldn't control, raised without proper guidance. For that, we bear some responsibility. He paused, letting the words sink in. We're prepared to offer amnesty. Full pardon for your crimes. A place in a controlled pack environment where you'll receive training to suppress your Phoenix abilities. You'll be monitored, but you'll live. You'll have a chance at a normal life. And if I refuse? Then we classify you as a rogue threat and authorized terminal force. Every pack in the Northern Territories will be bound by council law to hunt you on sight. You'll never know peace. Never know safety. And when they finally corner you, and they will, your death won't be quick. Thaddeus's expression didn't change. This is mercy, child. The only mercy you'll receive. Arya felt the weight of every wolf behind her. The freed enforcers who'd trusted her. Daemon, who'd sacrificed his isolation to stand beside her. They were all targets now because of her. Because she'd chosen to fight instead of hide. What about them? She gestured to the wolves at her back. What happens to the ones who chose to follow me? They return to their original packs. Face judgment for oath-breaking. Most will likely be demoted, punished, but allowed to reintegrate if they show proper remorse. The female elder spoke with clinical detachment. Their fate is separate from yours. And Daemon, the Shadow Walker has been rogue for years. His status doesn't change. He's free to continue his exile. Thaddeus's eyes narrowed. Unless he continues to aid you. Then he becomes complicit in your crimes, and the offer of mercy extends to neither of you. It was a trap. A beautifully constructed trap. Accept the council's terms, submit to a life of suppression and monitoring, but save the others. Or refuse, condemn everyone to a life of running, and guarantee their eventual deaths. Arya looked at Daemon, saw the conflict in his eyes. He would follow her decision, would stand with her no matter what she chose. But that just made it worse. Because whatever she decided would determine his fate too. Can I have time to think about it? Arya asked. You have until sunset. Thaddeus turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, child. Your mother made a similar choice once. When we discovered she was Phoenix-born, we gave her the same offer. Submit to training and monitoring or face elimination. She chose to hide instead. To run. To try to deny what she was. Arya's breath caught. You knew about my mother? We've known about your family line for generations. We've been watching, waiting to see if the phoenix blood would manifest again. Your mother managed to suppress it well enough that we allowed her to live quietly. But then she had you and the power came back stronger. She died before we could contain the threat and you slipped through our fingers. Thaddeus's smile was cold. Until now. Don't make your mother's mistakes. Choose survival over pride. The elders departed, fading into the forest like they'd never been there. But their words lingered like poison in the air. Arya stood frozen, her mind reeling. They'd known. The council had always known about her mother, had been monitoring them, waiting for Arya to manifest. Her entire life had been observed, catalogued, controlled from a distance. They're lying, Damon said fiercely. They're trying to break your spirit, make you doubt yourself. Are they though? Arya turned to face him. What if they're right? What if Phoenix-born really were tyrants? What if my bloodline deserves extinction? Stop. Don't let them do this to you. My mother ran, Damon. She hid and died in fear, trying to protect me from this power. And I've done the same thing. I've run and hidden and hurt people in the process. Maybe the council is right. Maybe I should accept their offer. At least then you and the others would be safe. Safe? One of the freed enforcers spoke up. The red-haired woman. You think going back to our old packs, bowing before alphas who treat us like property is safety? That's not life. That's just slower death. Another wolf nodded. We chose to follow you because you showed us something different. Something true. If you submit to the council, everything we fought for means nothing. But if I don't submit, you all become fugitives. Hunted. Probably killed. Then we die free, the woman said simply. Better than living as slaves. Damon took Arya's hand, pulled her attention back to him. Listen to me. The council isn't offering mercy. They're offering surrender. They want to break you, suppress your power, turn you into a warning for any other wolf who might think about being different. That's not life. That's existence without purpose. But people will die because of me. People die every day because of corrupt alphas and unjust pack laws. You didn't create this situation. You just had the courage to stand against it. His grip tightened. I know you're scared. I know you want to protect everyone. But you can't save people by sacrificing yourself to the same system that's been destroying wolves for generations. All that does is prove them right. Prove that power and fear can control anyone, even a phoenix-born. Arya wanted to believe him. Wanted to think she could stand against the council and somehow win. But the weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders like a physical thing. Every wolf here trusted her, believed in her, and she was terrified of letting them down. What if I'm not strong enough, she whispered. Then we get stronger together. Damon pulled her close, rested his forehead against hers. You're not alone in this. You've never been alone. I'm here. They're here. We're pack now, Arya. Real pack. Not the kind built on dominance and fear, but the kind built on choice and trust. And we're not going anywhere. The sun moved across the sky as Arya wrestled with her decision. The freed wolves gave her space, but she could feel their support like a warm presence at her back. Damon stayed close, not pushing, just present. As the afternoon wore into evening, as sunset approached with its deadline, Arya stood at the edge of the clearing and looked out at the forest. Somewhere out there, the council was waiting. Expecting her to break. Expecting her to choose the safe path. Her mother had chosen to hide. Had died trying to protect Arya from this very moment. And maybe that was love. Maybe that was the right choice for her time. But Arya wasn't her mother. And this wasn't the same world. She thought about the enforcers who'd touched her fire and chosen freedom. About Elder Morrigan's words in the Whispering Grove. About Damon's shadows wrapping around her like protection instead of threat. About the flowers blooming in scorched earth. She thought about what it meant to be phoenix-born. To carry fire that didn't just destroy, but purified. Renewed. Changed. And she made her choice. When Thaddeus returned at sunset, appearing with his 6 elders like shadows given form, Arya was waiting. The freed wolves stood at her back. Damon stood beside her, shadows already stirring. And in her chest, golden fire burned steady and sure. Have you decided? Thaddeus asked. Arya lifted her chin, met his ancient eyes without flinching. I have. And the answer is no. I won't submit. I won't suppress my power. I won't let you turn me into a cautionary tale about why different is dangerous. My mother spent her life hiding, and it killed her. I'm done hiding. Then you've chosen death. No. I've chosen life. Real life. Free life. And I'm choosing it for everyone who's been told they have to be smaller, quieter, less than they are just to survive in your broken system. Her fire rose, golden light flickering beneath her skin. You say Phoenix-born were tyrants. Maybe some were, but I'm not them. I'm not here to rule anyone. I'm here to show wolves they have a choice. That they don't have to accept your version of pack law as the only option. Thaddeus's expression turned to stone. You're starting a war you can't win, child. Maybe, but at least I'll be fighting for something worth fighting for. Can you say the same? The elder raised his hand, and the forest erupted with movement. Not just the 7 elders, but dozens of enforcers who'd been waiting and hiding. They emerged from the trees like a tide, surrounding the clearing, cutting off any escape. This is your last chance, Thaddeus said. Submit, or we end this now. Arya looked at Daemon, who gave her a fierce smile. Looked at the freed wolves, who stood ready to fight despite impossible odds. Looked at the army of enforcers who'd been sent to eliminate her. And she let her fire burn free. Then let's end it, Arya said, her voice carrying the weight of prophecy and power. But know this. Whatever happens here, word will spread. Wolves will hear that Phoenix-born have returned. That someone stood against the council and didn't back down. And they'll start asking questions. Wondering if maybe, just maybe, things could be different. She smiled, bright and terrible. You can kill me, but you can't kill what I represent. Change is coming, Elder. You just get to decide whether you burn with the old order or step aside and let something new take root. The sun touched the horizon. Sunset painted the sky gold and crimson. And in that moment of perfect balance between day and night, between light and darkness, the battle began. The council's enforcers moved like a coordinated strike force. 3 groups of 8, flanking from different angles, meant to overwhelm through sheer numbers. They'd done this before. Eliminated rogues. Put down threats. This should have been just another execution. But they'd never faced a Phoenix-born who'd stopped running. Arya shifted mid-stride, her transformation a blur of golden light. Her wolf erupted from her human skin larger than before, as if each battle had made her grow. The fire came with her, not wild and uncontrolled like during the harvest gathering, but focused, purposeful. Extensions of her will made manifest. The first wave hit, and Arya's flames met them like a living wall. But this time, she wasn't trying to purify or heal. She was trying to survive. The fire burned hot enough to make the enforcers yelp and fall back, singed and smoking. Not dead, she still couldn't bring herself to kill, but hurt enough to think twice about their second attack. Daemon's shadows exploded outward, creating zones of absolute darkness that swallowed enforcers whole. They emerged seconds later, disoriented and vulnerable. He moved through the chaos like a ghost, striking from angles that shouldn't exist, using his Umbra-born powers to manipulate space and perception. But there were too many. Even together, even fighting with everything they had, the math was brutal. 40 enforcers against Arya, Daemon, and 12 freed wolves with minimal combat training. They were going to lose. An enforcer broke through Arya's firewall, jaws aimed at her throat. She dodged, but not fast enough. Teeth scraped along her shoulder, drawing blood. Another came from the opposite side, going for her legs. She spun, flames lashing out, but her movements were getting slower. She was burning through power too fast. Arya. Daemon's shout cut through the chaos. You need to stop holding back. I can't kill them. Then we die. Is that what you want? No. But she couldn't become a murderer either. Couldn't prove the council right about Phoenix-born being dangerous, destructive, worthy of elimination. There had to be another way. Through the press of bodies, Arya caught sight of Thaddeus and the other elders standing at the clearing's edge. They weren't fighting, just watching, evaluating, making sure their enforcers did the work of elimination while keeping their own hands clean. And suddenly, Arya understood. This wasn't about defeating her in honorable combat. This was about proving a point. About showing any wolf who might think of rebellion that resistance was futile. That the council's power was absolute. They needed her to die afraid, overwhelmed, broken. A cautionary tale whispered around pack fires for generations. They needed her to be a victim. Screw that. Arya called to her fire, but not to attack. Instead, she directed it inward, let it fill her completely. Every vein, every bone, every molecule of her being. The pain was transcendent, beautiful, terrible. She could feel herself being unmade and remade simultaneously. The Covenant Tree's voice echoed in her mind, ancient and knowing. You are not the flame, daughter. You are the phoenix. Rise. Arya threw back her head and howled. The sound was wolf and woman and something else entirely, something primal that predated language. And when she howled, the forest answered. The ground beneath the clearing cracked. Golden light poured from the fissures, ancient magic responding to her call. The bioluminescent flowers from the Whispering Grove began blooming everywhere her blood had touched the earth, spreading in a wave of blue-green luminescence that made the entire battlefield glow. And Arya transformed. Not just shifted. Transformed. Her wolf body grew, expanded, became something that had never existed in the modern age. Wings erupted from her shoulders, not feathered but formed of living flame that didn't burn, couldn't be extinguished. Her eyes blazed with light bright enough to cast shadows in daylight. And around her, a corona of golden fire swirled like a miniature sun. The phoenix. Not the bloodline. The actual, literal phoenix. Every wolf in the clearing froze. Enforcers stumbled backward, their eyes wide with terror and awe. Even Thaddeus, ancient and unmoved by centuries of pack drama, took an involuntary step back. Arya's voice, when she spoke, resonated with harmonics that made the air vibrate. I am not your sacrifice. I am not your cautionary tale. I am Phoenix-born, daughter of the sun, guardian of the balance you abandoned. And I am done asking for permission to exist. She spread her flame wings wide, and the fire pulsed outward in a wave. But it didn't burn. It revealed. Every wolf it touched saw themselves as they truly were. Saw the compromises they'd made, the cruelties they'd accepted, the parts of their souls they'd buried to survive in a system built on dominance and fear. The enforcers saw how they'd been used, molded into weapons, stripped of choice and autonomy. They saw their alpha's corruption, the council's manipulation, the lies they'd been fed about duty and loyalty and proper order. And they saw Arya. Not as a threat, but as something else entirely. A mirror. A catalyst. A chance to choose differently. One by one, the enforcers shifted to human and dropped to their knees. Not in submission, but in recognition. Some wept openly. Others stared at their hands like they'd never seen them before. The transformation her fire had sparked wasn't physical. It was spiritual. They were waking up. No, Thaddeus hissed, his composure finally cracking. No, this isn't possible. Phoenix-born can't achieve true form. The last one to do so was executed 400 years ago. You don't have the training, the knowledge, the suffering? Arya's voice was gentle, pitying. The isolation? The rejection? I've had plenty of that, Elder. You made sure of it. Every pack that cast out a different wolf, every alpha who ruled through fear, every law that punished those who didn't fit your narrow definition of acceptable, you built this moment. You created exactly the conditions necessary for a phoenix to rise. She descended slowly, her flame wings beating in rhythm with her heart, until she stood before Thaddeus at eye level despite her massive form. You could have taught me, could have guided me, could have helped me understand and control this power. Instead, you chose to hunt me, to eliminate me, To make me so desperate, so cornered, that I had no choice but to become exactly what you feared most. You're an abomination, one of the other elders spat. The scarred male. A corruption of natural law. No. I'm evolution. I'm change. I'm what happens when you try to kill something that was meant to transform. Arya's gaze swept over all 7 elders. And here's what's going to happen now. You're going to return to your council. You're going to tell them that Phoenix-born have returned, and they're not going away. Tell them that the old order is dying. Tell them that wolves are waking up, asking questions, choosing freedom over fear. And if we refuse? Thaddeus asked, though his voice had lost its steel. Then stay here and watch your power crumble in real time. Arya gestured to the kneeling enforcers. These wolves were yours. Loyal. Obedient. Trained to kill on command. And now they're mine. Not because I dominated them or forced their submission, but because I showed them truth. How many more do you think will follow once word spreads? How many wolves are one honest conversation away from realizing they don't have to live in cages built by alphas who fear change? The elders exchanged glances. They were ancient, powerful, accustomed to being obeyed without question. But even they could see the writing on the wall. The world they'd maintained through fear and tradition was cracking at its foundations. This isn't over, Thaddeus said, but the words lacked conviction. You're right. It's just beginning. Arya's fire dimmed slightly, became less blinding. But here's the difference between your council and what I'm building. I don't need you to die. I don't need to eliminate you or erase you or pretend you never existed. I just need you to stop killing wolves for being different. Stop hunting those who don't fit your mold. Stop forcing everyone to be small and scared and obedient. Do that, and we don't have to be enemies. You're asking us to abdicate our authority. I'm asking you to evolve it. To recognize that the world has changed and you need to change with it. Because if you don't, if you keep clinging to the old ways through violence and fear, you won't need me to destroy you. You'll destroy yourselves. And I'll be here to help pick up the pieces. Thaddeus stared at her for a long moment. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. The other elders followed, moving like they'd aged a century in the span of an hour. They disappeared into the forest, and this time, Arya knew they wouldn't be coming back with more enforcers. They were going back to their council to report that everything had changed. The moment the elders vanished, Arya's transformation began to reverse. The wings dissolved into sparks of light. Her body shrank back to normal wolf size, then shifted to human. She collapsed to her knees, utterly drained, every ounce of energy spent. Damon was there instantly, catching her before she hit the ground. I've got you. I've got you. Arya leaned into his strength, too exhausted to even speak. Around them, the freed enforcers, now joined by dozens of council wolves who'd been shown the truth by her fire, were standing, stretching, looking at each other and the world with new eyes. The red-haired woman approached slowly, tears streaming down her face. I've been an enforcer for 8 years. 8 years of following orders, of hurting people because I was told it was necessary. And I never questioned it. Never thought to question it. But you showed me I had a choice all along. We all have choices, Arya managed to say, her voice hoarse. That's what I'm fighting for. Just the chance to choose. Other wolves gathered around, and Arya realized with a shock that she was at the center of a circle. Not a threatening circle, but something else. Something that felt like protection. Like pack. What happens now? Someone asked. A young male wolf, barely out of his teens. Damon answered when Arya couldn't. Now we build something new. A pack that isn't based on dominance or territory or blind obedience. One where wolves can be themselves, can use their gifts without fear, can choose their own paths. It won't be easy. The council won't accept this without a fight. But for the first time in centuries, we have a real chance to change things. And Arya? The red-haired woman looked at her with something like reverence. What is she to us? Not your alpha, Arya said firmly, finding her voice. I'm not here to rule anyone. I'm just someone who's tired of hiding. Tired of apologizing for existing. If you want to stay with us, stay because you choose to, not because you think you have to. The whole point of this is freedom. Choice. Being able to walk away if that's what's right for you. But someone has to lead, another wolf said. Someone has to make decisions. Then we make them together. As equals. As pack. Arya looked at Damon, who nodded in agreement. No more alphas and omegas. No more hierarchy built on who's strongest or most dominant. Just wolves trying to build something better. It was an insane idea. It went against everything pack culture had taught for generations. But looking at the faces around her, at wolves who'd been given a glimpse of something different, Arya saw hope. Maybe insane was exactly what they needed. As the sun set fully, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, the newly formed pack gathered around a fire. Someone had found food. Someone else had started singing an old wolf song that Arya remembered from childhood. Slowly, impossibly, they were becoming something new. Damon sat beside Arya, his arm around her shoulders, keeping her upright through sheer force of will. You achieved true form, he said quietly, so only she could hear. Do you understand how rare that is? Most Phoenix-born spend decades learning to do what you did instinctively. It didn't feel instinctive. It felt like dying and being reborn simultaneously. That's what transformation is. Death of the old self. Birth of something new. He pressed a kiss to her temple. I'm proud of you. Terrified for you, but proud. The council won't let this stand. No. But they can unheard what happened here. Can undo what your fire revealed. Word is going to spread, Arya. To every pack in the territories. And when it does, wolves are going to start questioning. Rebelling. Choosing differently. You didn't just win a battle today. You planted seeds of revolution. Arya looked at the gathered wolves. At faces young and old, scarred and fresh, all of them marked by the choice to stand here instead of running. I just wanted to survive. You did better than survive. You became exactly what the prophecy promised. A catalyst. A reckoning. The phoenix who rises from ashes and burns away corruption. Damon's silver eyes glowed in the firelight. And the best part? You're just getting started. Arya wanted to protest, to say she wasn't ready for prophecy or revolution or any of this. But as she sat surrounded by her new pack, feeling their warmth and their hope and their fierce determination to build something better, she realized something. Ready or not, she'd already started. The moment she'd stopped running, the moment she'd chosen to burn instead of hide, she'd set events in motion that couldn't be reversed. The phoenix had risen. And the world would never be the same. One of the wolves started telling stories. Others joined in, sharing tales of their lives before, their hopes for what could come next. Someone produced a bottle of something strong, and it made its way around the circle. Laughter mixed with tears, grief with joy, the complicated emotions of people who'd just chosen to leap into an unknown future. And through it all, Arya felt her fire burning steady in her chest. Not consuming her. Not threatening to explode. Just there. Present. A part of her that was finally accepted. She thought about her mother. About the woman who died keeping Arya's power hidden, who'd spent her life running and afraid. And Arya made a silent promise to her memory. I'm not hiding anymore, Mama. I'm burning bright. I'm becoming everything you were afraid to be. And I'm going to make sure no other Phoenix-born has to live in fear the way we did. The fire crackled. The stars emerged. And in a clearing that had nearly become a battlefield, a new kind of pack was being born. 3 months later, the world looked different. Not physically. The forests were still forests. The mountains still stood. The territories remained carved up by ancient boundaries and older grievances. But something fundamental had shifted in the wolf world, like a fault line splitting deep underground, invisible but catastrophic. Arya stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking the valley below. Behind her, the sanctuary they'd built from nothing sprawled across several acres of protected ground. Cabins for those who needed shelter. Training grounds for those learning to control their gifts. Gardens where wolves who'd never been allowed to grow anything planted seeds and watched life emerge from soil. They called it Haven. 200 wolves lived here now, refugees from 15 different packs. Some had been exiled for being different. Others had simply walked away from alphas who ruled through fear. All of them had heard the story of the Phoenix-born who'd stood against the council and survived. All of them had chosen something different. "You're brooding again," Damon said, appearing beside her with the silence he'd mastered. "I can feel your thoughts from across camp. Just thinking about how much has changed. 3 months ago, I was running for my life. Now I'm responsible for 200 lives. You're not responsible for them. You're responsible with them. There's a difference." He handed her a mug of tea. "The council sent another emissary today. 4th one this month. What did they want this time? Same as always. They're offering a truce. Recognition of Haven as neutral territory in exchange for you agreeing not to recruit from existing packs." Damon's tone made it clear what he thought of the offer. They're scared. Word keeps spreading. 3 more packs have had wolves walk away in the last week alone. The old order is bleeding members, and they don't know how to stop it. Arya sipped her tea. It was bitter, grounding. "And what did you tell the emissary?" "That it's not my decision to make. This is your vision. Your movement. I'm just the shadow who helps it happen. It's not my movement. It's ours. All of us." Arya turned to face him fully. "That's the point, isn't it? No more single leaders making decisions for everyone else. We decide together. The wolves are waiting for your answer about the council's offer. They want to know what you think." What did she think? Arya wasn't sure anymore. Part of her wanted to accept the truce, to secure Haven's safety and stop the constant threat of council attacks. But another part, the part that had been hunted and exiled and nearly killed for being different, knew that acceptance would mean compromise. Would mean agreeing to stop helping wolves who needed refuge. Would mean abandoning the very purpose of everything they'd built. "Tell them I need to consult with the Pack Council," Arya said finally. "We'll make the decision together. That's how this works." Damon smiled. "That's my phoenix. Never taking the easy path. The easy path is what got us here in the first place. Generations of wolves taking the easy path, accepting the system, not questioning. I'm done with easy." They stood together as the sun descended toward the horizon, painting the valley in shades of amber and rose. From the camp behind them came the sounds of life. Wolves training. Children playing. Someone singing. The simple, extraordinary sounds of people living without fear. "Do you ever regret it?" Damon asked quietly. "Choosing this life? You could have accepted the council's first offer. Could be living in a controlled pack somewhere, monitored but safe. Safe isn't living. It's just existing." Arya leaned into his warmth. "And no, I don't regret it. Not for a second. Even knowing what it's cost. Even knowing what's still coming. Because something was coming." Arya could feel it the way animals sense earthquakes before they strike. The council's offers were getting more desperate. Pack alphas were growing more aggressive in their rhetoric about Haven. And there were rumors, whispered in the dark, of packs banding together to plan a coordinated strike. The peace wouldn't last. It never did. "What do you think happens next?" Arya asked. "Honestly, I think we either prove that this new way can work, or we die trying. There's no middle ground anymore. You've forced everyone to choose sides. The old order or the new vision. Fear or freedom. There's no sitting on the fence when the phoenix is burning." Arya thought about that. About all the wolves who'd come to Haven seeking refuge. About the ones still trapped in packs that treated them like property. About the future they were trying to build on the bones of a corrupt system. "Would you have chosen me?" she asked suddenly. "Back at the beginning, if you'd known how complicated this would get, would you still have come looking for me in that storm?" Damon was quiet for a long moment. Then he took her hand, laced their fingers together. "Every time. In every life. In every version of this story. I would always choose you." The words settled into her chest, warm and sure. Arya had spent so much of her life believing she was too much, too different, too dangerous to be chosen. But Damon had looked at all of her, the fire and the fear, the power and the doubt, and chosen her anyway. And more than that, he'd helped her choose herself. I love you, Arya said, the words simple but weighted with everything she couldn't quite articulate. For seeing me. For standing with me. For believing I could be something more than a cautionary tale. I love you for making me believe I could be more too. Damon pulled her close, rested his chin on top of her head. We're building something impossible here, Arya. Something that shouldn't work according to every rule of pack culture. But it's working anyway. Because you had the courage to burn when everyone told you to hide. They stood together as darkness fell, two impossibly powerful wolves who'd found each other in the chaos and decided to build something new. Behind them, Haven glowed with lamplight and life. Ahead of them, an uncertain future full of battles not yet fought, choices not yet made, transformations still to come. But for this moment, for this breath, they were exactly where they needed to be. So here's what I want to know. Here's the question that matters. Would you have chosen her side? If you'd been there in that clearing, watching Arya transform into something ancient and impossible, watching her challenge the very foundations of pack law, would you have knelt? Would you have joined her? Would you have been brave enough to walk away from everything you knew for the chance at something different? Or would you have been one of the wolves who ran? Who retreated back to the safety of pack structure and alpha authority, telling yourself that change was too dangerous, too costly, too much? It's easy to say you'd be brave when you're sitting safely wherever you are right now. Easy to imagine yourself as the hero of someone else's story. But Arya's fight isn't over. Haven isn't secure. The revolution she started is still burning, still spreading, still asking wolves to make impossible choices. And maybe, just maybe, there's a little bit of Arya in all of us. That part that knows we're living too small, hiding too much, accepting systems that don't serve us just because change is terrifying. That part that carries fire we're afraid to let burn because we've been told our whole lives that being too much is the same as being too dangerous. So I'll ask again. Would you have chosen her side? Would you have let your fire burn? Or would you have feared her too? Think about it. Sit with it. Let that question dig into the parts of you that still believe you have to be small to be safe. Because Arya's story isn't just about wolves and prophecy and ancient bloodlines. It's about what it costs to be yourself in a world that profits from your silence. It's about choosing freedom over comfort, truth over peace, burning over hiding. And if this story lit something inside you, if it made you feel seen or brave or like maybe, just maybe, you could choose differently too, then subscribe to Cindy's Wolfheart Stories. Because here, in this space, we don't just tell tales. We tell the stories that burn. The ones that ask hard questions and refuse to give easy answers. The ones that remind you that you were never meant to be small. You were meant to burn. So hit that subscribe button. Ring the notification bell. Join the pack of wolves who chose to be different. And stay tuned, because Arya's story? It's far from over. There are battles ahead, transformations still to come, choices that will shake the very foundations of what it means to be a wolf. And you're not going to want to miss what happens when the phoenix rises again. Will you choose her side? The answer might just change everything.